The arts and humanities are under siege in the United States. Why is this happening, and what can we do to help? Hey, welcome back to The Desperate Historian. I'm Aaron Miller. Thanks for tuning in, stopping by to talk about history for a little bit. Hey, do me a favor. If you like this kind of content, hit that like and subscribe button or leave a comment. Help grow this channel, helps me spread the word about the importance of history and history education. Yeah, I think that the humanities and history and arts and culture and the education in those topics is under siege in this country, and it's for a variety of reasons. I think it's partially cultural, partially political, partially financial. So why is this happening? Well, I think that right now in education, there's a lot of emphasis on STEM education. That is, science, technology, engineering, and math education. And I think that all learning is good. I think that all education is great. Our opportunity to try to better ourselves in whatever field, whatever discipline is fantastic. But I don't think that we should sort of elevate one over another. I think that there are some people who love the STEM fields and they should absolutely go into it. But there are other people who love the humanities and love art and culture, and they have gifts in those things. And we should encourage people to go into that. But I think for everyone, we ought to have a holistic approach to education. I think that's really the best for our society. We don't want to just create a bunch of consumers or worker drones for large corporations. We want to have an engaged, active citizenry that can contribute outside of just the workplace. So that's one of the reasons that is happening. Another reason I think this is happening is the demise of liberal arts colleges. In 2025, we're facing a demographic low point. I'm supposed to come back here for the college age population, but there's just not a lot of people going to college. Not as many as there used to be anyway. And there's also a lot of males that have checked out from the workforce or from higher education or military service for whatever reason. And that's another problem that's been well documented and talked about on other channels. So that's been part of the problem. We've seen sort of demise of liberal arts education. People have been told a myth over the years too that you can't get a degree in liberal arts and find a job in the liberal arts and the humanities. And until recently, I was living proof that's not true. That people who do get degrees in the liberal arts and humanities can find work and so forth. And then in terms of the liberal arts colleges that have failed, yeah, some of that is due to the declining enrollment, but also a lot of those colleges had been badly mismanaged financially and had been mismanaged for decades. And if anyone had corrected that ship, had anyone had fixed those finances sooner, I think a lot of those colleges might have survived. Another reason we're facing challenges to humanities and the arts and cultural education is that we're seeing a lot of cuts coming from state and federal budgets. A lot of these are politically motivated. We're also facing just overall weakening economy as inflation goes up, as unemployment goes up. So we're seeing state and federal governments wanting to cut budgets. And usually when budgets are cut, the arts and humanities, history, they're the first to go. They're the first on the chopping block. Of course, the loss of my own job was a result of cutting to the humanities. But, in my opinion, my experience, the humanities and arts, they're usually one of the more profitable departments on campuses or in high schools. Or at least one of the cheaper ones to run. Faculty salaries in the arts and humanities tend to be lower than engineering and business. You don't have to pay them as much. Most classes are taught by adjuncts or graduate students. Some graduate students, at least where I went to grad school, they were paying their own way anyway, so they were very profitable. You just had students who were interested in the humanities or interested in studying history, and they're willing to pay their own way. You had other students too who were they were doing this sort of part time. Actually, that's how I started. I started as a part time student, and paid my own way for the first few semesters. I paid my own way, working outside of the history department. So I was a profit to the college. And then when I did get a TA for my doctoral work, I made like $1,100 a month, something like that. And so I was teaching 3 classes and making 1,100 bucks a month. So I was pretty cheap labor for the institution. Um, and then you have some graduate students who are like they're teachers and they're getting a master's degree, so they're employed somewhere else, so they're also paying their own way. So a lot of these arts and culture and humanities departments, they are actually profitable. Um, yes, that the axing of some programs that in the arts and humanities have tend to be programs that are smaller or lower in enrollment, but a lot of these programs tend to be focused on foreign cultures, foreign languages, arts and music. And I don't know about you, but I kind of think it's important to study the languages and cultures of our allies, as well as studying the language and culture of our global competitors. Politically, there's also been accusations that teachers, librarians, artists, and other people who are working in the humanities are liberal and have a liberal bias. But I found that to be a gross exaggeration. That faculty, like all groups of people, tend to have a mix of ideologies. There are certainly conservative historians out there. And one of the best adjuncts in my department was very conservative. Faculty as a group usually disagree and have really different approaches. And one of my friends who is an artist and taught art, it was actually probably the best businessman on campus. He certainly understood money and fundraising better than any administrator did. So you can see how that can be short-sighted. In my experience, from my point of view, educators, historians, librarians, artists, musicians, they've all been under personal attack and their motives have been questioned. But most of the ones that I know, they just want to work in the disciplines that they love. And for me, in my own classes, I generally play devil's advocate. If I sense that a class kind of has one political ideology or one point of view on a topic, I tend to take the other one, regardless of my own point of views. I want to kind of challenge their preconceived notions. Um, I'm more committed to the discipline, and I think this is true of a lot of academics. I'm more committed to my discipline than I am committed to any sort of personal politics or ideology. I'm more interested in, I'm more committed to historical truth and accuracy than I am to any kind of political partisanship or ideology. I think that most faculty working in the humanities or in art, they want students to learn the materials and then for students to come up with their own interpretations on things, not just mimic what the professor is saying or what the teacher is saying. Locally, we've seen that school children are petitioning the school board to keep their summer band camp after the state has slashed the budget. One thing you can be sure of, though, even as there are cuts to public resources for the arts and education and the humanities, that the wealthy will still make sure that their kids have music lessons and can go to the theater and can major in things like philosophy or political science. So why should only the wealthy have access to the humanities and social sciences? Why should only the elites have access to music education and the theater and galleries and libraries? The benefits of arts and humanities, regardless of your profession, regardless of your ideology, they're well established. The arts and humanities, culture, music, they create lifelong learners. We create a class of creatives, a class of people who are creative in their field. These are often entrepreneurs. Um, these people tend to be civically minded. They're part of solving the problems that we're facing today. I think a lot of the issues that we're having as a society or that we're having as a country right now is that we have people who have never read the Constitution, have struggled understanding the Constitution and its context. They don't know how economics work. They don't realize that everything that they've read online may not be true. So they have trouble interpreting sources. And a liberal arts teaches these skills on how to get through the modern world and the importance of having critical thinking skills and reading comprehension and so forth. So the liberal arts and humanities, culture, art classes, they enhance reading, writing, critical thinking skills. In these courses, you learn how to analyze text. You learn how to read more into documents. You become better at public speaking and better at communicating. And you need those skills in the workforce because this is how you're going to separate yourself in the job market. This is how you're going to separate yourself in the workplace. I've heard a lot from companies I've worked with over the years that they need people with social skills. They need people with people skills. They can train them in the technology. They can train them with the technical skills. They can give them that. But they need people who arrive ready to work, who already have these skills that you learn in the humanities, that you learn from the liberal arts, that you are a lifelong learner, that you can accumulate new skills. And for me personally, learning things in the humanities and culture and music, this has opened up all kinds of worlds to me. It's made my life richer. It's made it funnier. It's given me some tools to cope when I have stressful things to deal with. And then I also realized how much that I don't know, that there are all kinds of subjects I don't know anything about, and that maybe I need to learn more about that subject, or I need to turn to an expert to help me with it. Since the end of World War II, I think that the U.S. has built the world's most powerful, largest economy. And I think a lot of that is due to the money that we invested in education, the money that we spent in higher education, and the system of colleges that we built since World War II. And that is included, that network, that system of colleges has included the liberal arts and humanities, whether that's standalone liberal arts colleges or that's liberal arts, art, and culture and humanities programming at public institution. So, what can you do to help out? What can you do to help the humanities, help the liberal arts, help our education that's currently under siege? First of all, if you are in a place in your life where you can financially support the arts or public media or history or library, do that. If you can write somebody a check and you can help out those organizations, great. If you can't do that, you can give of your time. You can volunteer to help those organizations. Another thing you can do is call your local representative at the state, local, and federal level and tell them you want to support these programs, you want them to survive. Another thing you can do is attend events, go to a concert, go to the theater, attend these things and show your support that way. You can vote for politicians and vote for measures that support the arts and humanities. So, it's not like that we can't do anything. There are things that we can do to continue to help out the arts and humanities. Hey, that's just my 2 cents as to some of the problems that the arts and humanities are facing right now. Do me a favor if you like this kind of content, if you like this kind of frank conversation about history and history education, hit those like and subscribe buttons or leave a comment. Just my 2 cents. I'll see you next time on The Desperate Historian.